Hey, this is April Stott and Gretchen. And Gretchen is in 7th grade this year, but last year in 6th grade, we were talking about her favorite art lessons that we did, and she said that she loved drawing an eye, and the kids in the class seemed to like it too. So we're going to do an art drawing lesson, and this lesson is for Mrs. Maple's class. Hello, Mrs. Maple's class. We have the printable for the eye. I would suggest that you print it out so that you have it to look at. Your reference material. These are the same photo and they're the same black and white photo, but when we printed it, the printer used color ink printing this one and just black ink printing this one. So that's why they look a little different. I liked this one for reference better, and Gretchen liked the shadow in this one. So that's why they look a little different even though it's the same picture. We'll have the link for the printable in the description of the video. So all you need for this is a piece of paper. This is regular 8.5 by 11 paper that we cut in half. Sometimes it's easier to draw on a smaller piece of paper with a pencil because it's such a small drawing surface. And we have an eraser because do you guys ever use number 2 pencils and then it leaves that nasty pink streak all over your beautiful drawing? So we have erasers, pencils, and paper. That's it. So we're going to start by using really light sketchy lines. We're going to be doing drawing and erasing for this picture. So you don't want to use a heavy dark screaming line. You want to use a nice whispery line. I'm going to do mine a little bit darker just for the video, and Gretchen's going to do hers lighter. So the first thing we're going to do, and our eye, when we're done, it'll be about the same size as the reference material. So the first thing we're going to do is draw the iris, or like the circle, what you think of an eye. And I'm going to draw it really light and sketchy. And I'm not going to worry about doing a perfect circle right here. And it's like if you divide the page in half right here, it's just below the half line. So go ahead and draw a circle in. No, it's fine. Okay. And you can see, or maybe you can't see because she's doing them so nice and light. Gretchen's using really light lines. I'm going to make you guys crazy. Keep talking about light lines. Don't worry about it being perfect or not right now.
No, I'm just getting overall shape.
Perfect. Okay, and then we're going to draw the shape of the eye around the iris. We're actually going to come down on the circle, so before you start, come down on your circle a little bit like that. And then the point of the eye, right here down in the corner of the eye, it actually, see how it kind of comes down around the eyeball and then has this little triangle right here, like that. So we're going to come down around the eyeball and then do this little triangle right here. And see how mine is not perfect? I'm just kind of going for it. And then right here, it comes right up to the bottom, even maybe comes over the iris a tiny bit, and then comes down. Look at this white space right here. It's really not that big. So I'm going to come down quite a bit here and come up here. It's okay if it's not perfect. This is just for fun. Okay, so now we have our basic eye shape and we can start to add on some of the other things. So you can see, it's a good thing I drew a little bit lighter. I'm going to erase where the iris was coming up over the eyelid right there. Just 'cause sometimes too many lines can be confusing. And we're going to do the crease of the eyelid. And on the drawing, like if you take your finger and measure, sometimes it's hard to tell with just your eye, but if you take your finger and measure, that's a whole finger width from the top of the iris to the crease in the eye on this photo. So right here, I'm going to make the crease about right here on my picture. My picture is a little bit smaller than what is on the reference photo. Oh, that's perfect, sweetie. And then we want to show about where the eyebrow is. And again, if I'm taking my finger, it's about 2 inches on this printout, which may feel, I don't know, maybe that feels about the right size. So I'm going to just rough in some really rough lines just to show about here is where I'm going to put the eyebrow. Okay?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so now let's add a pupil to this eye. And if you look right here from the side of the iris to the pupil, this space right here is the same width. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can just kind of...
That looks good enough.
Yep, that looks good enough. Okay, and I'm actually going to come in on my iris a little bit. Pull that in a little bit so that's... It's going to look a little funky until we color that pupil in, but we're not going to do that quite yet. We're just going to keep adding in the detail. Okay, and then, so right here is our eyelid. Now we can do the lower eyelid. I'm actually going to clean up this line really quick with my eraser on the bottom. Yours is already clean. And then I'm going to draw the lower eyelid right here. A parallel line right underneath this one. And now we can start to add some of the fun detail. So before we get too far though, I want to do the highlight. And the highlight on this eye is actually really interesting. There's like a line over here, like a dot here, and there's like a rectangle here, and overall this is kind of like a curved rectangle. So I'm going to start. You can simplify it if you want. You can just do a dot if you want, but I feel like that detail is kind of what makes it look really cool. And then you can see that there's a little highlight right over the pupil. So I'm going to just draw a circle there, and I see another little highlight right here. So that's going to help me kind of plan where those are. Now I'm going to color in the pupil. I mean shade in the pupil. And I'm going to do this. You can kind of build it up as you shade it in. You can use cross hatching, you know, where you go in different directions. And because it's a number 2 pencil, it's not going to be super black. It's just going to be a really dark gray, and that's fine. So that's our darkest part of the eye right there.
Oh.
Nice, babe. Okay, so right here, I'm going to make sure I have this shape of my iris defined. And I'm going to start to add in, oh, that looks really good. I'm going to start to add in some of this beautiful texture, and you can see that most irises are darker on the edges, and you can see it a lot in this reference photo. It's darker on the edges and then a little bit lighter on the inside. Not all eyes, but a lot of eyes are a little bit darker on the outside of the iris. And I'm going to make my lines kind of go in towards the pupil. So if you want to do it like that, you can kind of rotate your photo. I'm sorry, you can rotate your drawing. And then see how I just go around where I drew my highlight. So, and then once I have the lines down, I'm going to just slightly start to shade. If you look at the reference photo, this is as black as the pupil right here. This shadow of where the eyelid is coming over the iris. So I'm going to make that really dark there. And then around on the outside of the iris is, I would say, like 2 or 3 shades lighter than the pupil, but still fairly dark. So I'm going to just start shading it in. And like I said, if it's easier to move your paper around, do that. I'm going to do the outside of the iris first, and then come in and blend it in. Okay, now I can start doing a little bit lighter into the center. And I'm still keeping, I'm not going inside where my pupils are, or I'm sorry, my highlights are. And I'm not going to spend too much more time on the iris, but you can if you want. Right here, if you look at the reference photo, it's so cool. You can see the reflection of the eyelashes, and the eyelashes above are going out this way, and the eyelashes in the reflection are opposite. They're coming in this way, so I'm going to draw that because I think that's so cool looking. And you can see they kind of curve around the eyes. I'm going to do it like that. And now the whites of the eye are not the whitest part. There's a little highlight here, and there's highlights here. Actually, I'm going to shade that in so there's, it looks a little bit more like that highlight. Okay, but the whites of the eye aren't actually white, so I'm going to very, very lightly shade it right here, just so light. And also over here, you can see that it's a tiny, tiny bit darker underneath here. And a tiny bit darker right here. And then, like Gretchen, that's what I was just going to do. You can take your finger and kind of blend it if you want. But don't over blend it. Sometimes people get really excited and they over blend their drawing. You want to keep some of that crisp dark detail too. Okay, so now we can add the shading. It's a little bit easier to add this shading before we do the eyelashes, which will be a very fun and satisfying part. But first, let's knock this out. You can see this shading right here. It's not black, it's just a dark gray. It's not a heavy dark line. So I'm just going to add a little bit of shading here. But you can see the line right here does get a little bit darker, so I'm going to make it a little darker right there. You can kind of see the crease.
I'm still working on my pupil.
That's fine. You're doing great. Okay, and we can start to add some of the detail in here to the corner of the eye, the tear ducts. And you see how it's like two kind of lighter lines and then a little bit darker. It makes it look a little bit wet. So we're going to do like that. It's okay if it's not exactly what you see. This is, you're making a drawing, not a photograph. Okay, so I'm going to take my finger and gently blend this right here. I'm going to do a little bit more shading right here. Here's a little trick for you. Most the reference photo right here has, shows that the eye folds, it goes in a little bit. So I'm going to do a little extra. It's almost like a tear shape right here of shading right above the eye. So then it makes it look like the eye is going, the skin is kind of going back there. And then I'm going to just blend it in with my finger. And see how on this reference photo, right here, the eyelid is just, it's not always like that. It's just a little bit darker than the other skin. So, and then it kind of, right here, it's a little bit lighter. So I'm just going to add a little shading there and then leave it there. But I'm going to add a little shading right here to show that the eye is sitting back into the face. And see how I'm, as I shade, I'm kind of curving my lines also to show that the eye is sitting, the eyeball is sitting inside here. So you can kind of take a beat and think, look at your picture, see if there's anywhere you want a little bit shaded. I think I'm going to shade it a little more right here. That looks great.
Thanks.
tiny bit of shading right here. Okay, so now we're going to start adding some of the detail. And I'm going to, sorry, we're going to start by looking at eyelashes. So they are growing in this part, like just the edge of the eyelid. See how you can see it kind of curving up right here? So the eyelash isn't just straight up. All of these are curved. Every single line here is curved. There's not a single straight line. So we're going to go right here. Oh, and also notice right here how thick these eyelashes are. So I'm going to just start drawing some curved eyelashes in. And these are all not perfect and uniform. They're kind of wild and free. So don't worry about making them perfectly lined up. So these, a lot of these kind of curve out this way, but when you come over here, see how they start curving this way. Even right here, some of these are curving back that direction. I'm going to build them up over here. Oops, I got a rogue eyelash, but that's okay. And then right here, do you see how the lower eyelashes are coming out of this section right here? And kind of the same thing over here, a lot of them are going this direction, and then right near the corner there's just a few short ones kind of going over this way. So definitely the eyelashes start to be thicker about where the iris is. And I'm going to add a bunch more right here. Okay, now we're getting pretty close to done. We're just going to add some eyebrows, and these eyebrows right here are great. See how they kind of, from the top, they're coming down, and from the bottom, they're going up, and they kind of come into a peak down here. So before you start, if you want to like just lightly show about where you're going to have your eyebrows start and stop, that might help. And then you can start adding individual strands in like this and just kind of fill in that shape. And you can just kind of keep adding them until it looks right to you. It's not a solid, nobody's eyebrows are a solid color. They're just made up of the individual hairs. But if you get to a point where you just want it to blend a little bit more, you can kind of cheat and take your finger and just blend it in like that. And if you want to come back right here on your eyelashes and just make sure that all looks, you can, so I'm not talking. You can, I'm just adding just some lines like that, just to really define where the top of the eyelid is. Okay, so we're almost done. I'm going to just make mine a little bit darker. Now's the time you can look and see, is anything bothering you about your picture? Sometimes it's helpful to walk away for a little bit and just take a pause and then come back and look at it again. Also, sometimes it's helpful to put it on the other side of the room and look at it, or look at it from an arm's width away, and sometimes it will surprise you how much better it looks when you get a little space from it. Okay, so I'm going to take my finger and just blend in my iris just a tiny bit. And then if you want, you can take your eraser and brighten up some of your highlights. You don't have to. And this highlights on my photo is actually a little darker, so I'm going to blend it in a tiny bit. And I think I'm about done.
Oops.
Are you about done?
Not yet.
Okay, take your time. Okay, there you have it. 2 awesome eye pictures that look a little different because they are by 2 different artists. And they don't have to look like a photo because this is a drawing. If we wanted a photo, we could just print one out. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It's a drawing, and I think they look great. If you want to sign it, I would sign it in a pencil in the corner. And then you can put the year under it and go hang it up somewhere and look at it and be so proud.